Welcome to episode 22 of ECTEL Bytes. The show is a production of the Eastern Caribbean Telecommunications Authority, and I'm your host, Coretta Crooks-Charles, ECTEL's Communications and Media Relations Manager. ECTEL is the regional regulatory body advising the National Telecommunications Regulatory Commissions, or the NTRCs, on electronic communications or telecommunications matters in our 5 contracting states, namely the Commonwealth of Dominica, Grenada, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent, and the Grenadines. ECTEL Bytes aims to provide you, our viewers, with bite-sized information about developments in electronic communications being undertaken by the Directorate and like-minded organizations. I'm so excited to explore today's topic, and it's Caribbean Cyber Chronicles, Defending Our Digital Shores. To help us to dissect it is our very special guest, Mr. Edward Millington, the founder and managing director of CariSec Global Inc. Welcome to ECTEL Bytes, Mr. Millington.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, so tell us a bit about CariSec Global Inc. and the services you provide, especially as it relates to cybersecurity.
Oh, yes. Good morning. We are a managed security service provider, providing pure security, our ecosystem of security strategic solutions are at the risk level, map or in accordance to international standards, etc. All things email security, penetration testing, advisory, AI-driven cybersecurity awareness, recovery, instant recovery. Data today is very active, so we have solutions that not only can protect data in operation, but also encrypt that data at a risk level. So in case, let's say, you have a ransomware attack and that information is exfiltrated, that's also protected. Database security, and we also provide a whole range of ICT services for companies looking for engineers or just those managed solutions, including like managed detection response, etc. So a whole range of solutions that can be viewed on our website.
Okay, all right, and you share your website with us later on. So let's jump into the whole issue of cybersecurity. What are some of the most common cybersecurity threats currently facing the Caribbean region, and how are they evolving?
Well, there's a slight twist to that, and ransomware. We have business email compromises. We have vulnerabilities and so forth. And as I always say to persons, threats are always out there, even in our natural life. I think, and this is a twist that comes through it. Threats always exist, and the Caribbean is always been known to be vulnerable, due to our economics and human resources and so forth. I think one of our main threats, and this is the slight twist that might raise some eyebrows, is really us as a people being able to understand that these risks exist out there and how we can put the necessary strategy into, to risk mitigate, ransomware attacks, the vulnerabilities within software, within our infrastructures. We have a great evolution of digital transformation that's going on all throughout the Caribbean. We have a lot of projects and so forth. And if we want to look at the key aspects of those components, the cyber risk awareness is very small and very modular and not fully integrated because, like any part of the world, and we see it within the legal systems and critical infrastructure within the hospital infrastructure. We just had one late 2022 into 2023, the attack on the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. We had TSCP, which was down only for a bit, but the QEH was down for quite a bit, and so the risk is so high that we need to pay more attention from a governance level. So I think that, yes, we can look at the ransomware and vulnerabilities within our infrastructure, the level of security awareness we have with employees and the general public and so forth. Many of these things are driven at the governance level. In other words, it needs to be driven from, not only going beyond the policies, not able to enact those policies, putting those policies in place where we can say, what, our citizens, our businesses have moved to the next level to prevent any cyber attack from creating those major incidents that can lead to breaches and downtime, etc.
Okay. So earlier in February, I think less than 2 weeks ago, there was a cyber attack on the Western Union branch in Castries, St. Lucia. And according to the article on Loop St. Lucia, the attack resulted in significant disruptions to the operations of the cash transfer agency, leaving both customers and officials bewildered. Can you share some recent examples of cyber attacks or breaches that have impacted businesses or individuals in the Caribbean, and what lessons can be learned from them?
Yeah. So we had it, very late, we had the TSTT, big telecoms company, being affected, just late last year. We had the QEH, we also have the legal sector. We had PriceSmart being affected, which was in America itself. But again, with all these brands, everything playing back into a major database. So there have been a number of attacks or instances in this particular case over the last 3 years, starting from, we all know about St. Kitts and Nevis, which was gravely hit with a ransomware attack that took out many systems. We also have Martinique, Guadeloupe, so even in 2022, we had parts of the government system, or a number of government systems being hit. So these are well-known attacks, and they will continue. I want to say it's quite normal. It's quite normal. You can try to minimize an attack, but attack will happen at some point in time. Our aim as cybersecurity advocates is to highlight, if in case you're attacked, just like maybe your purse, don't put everything into one area. In case I want to steal it, at least you still have your ID on your card or something, still your keys in a pocket, something like that. In other words, we want to minimize the attack surface. We don't want that attack surface to be so large. Let's say for government to be hit, all the departments are down, connections are down, and in a case like this, availability does not go on beyond maybe a few days, but not into weeks, possibly a month, etc.
Okay. All right. So are there any misconceptions about cyber attacks by Caribbean people? If so, please elaborate.
Yes, I think our major team in the Caribbean is that we don't have anything to lose. Why should someone attack us? We don't have any money and so forth. We have something called the new gold, the new liquid gold, whatever you want to call it. I call it platinum, whatever it is. And that's our data, our identity, our ability to sell something to us. A person doesn't understand that. When we go online and we see ads directed towards us, everything's from a geographical location, and every cent counts. We learn that there from coming out in the school days, every cent counts. So if we can understand that our data is what we could call the black oil or the gold oil, whatever you want to call it, our data is very precious right now. And if you can not only steal data but get a few coppers, as our Prime Minister would say, out of us will we, start money out of you, due to the release of data. Every avenue to sell our data or to use our data should be precious to us. And I think that we are not acknowledging that our data is very important. So in other words, we will be attacked. If you want to say, well, why would Russia need to attack us or any, so that's fine. But in the meantime, the cybercrime, or what we call it cybercrime syndicate, it doesn't distinguish. Everyone is a viable resource, a financial resource. That's what we have to look at us in the Caribbean. We are a valuable financial resource in this global syndicate we call cybercrime.
Interesting. All right. So how are governments in the Caribbean working to strengthen cybersecurity regulations and infrastructure to protect against cyber threats?
I think it's a very slow process. We all have to be honest. We still haven't had, many CSERPs being started. We have in Jamaica, Grenada slowly, trying to develop their own. In Trinidad, more operation from that particular point of view. Barbados to be, implemented. So if you look at the general term or general evolution of digitalization and digital transformation within the Caribbean, they're there to help us to develop. But when you look at the risk that comes along, if you decide to walk on the street with all the glamour, gold on your fingers, rings, chains, everything. We are saying to the person out there, we are ready to be attacked in a particular sense. So I think outside of just general regulations, and we have this cybercrime bill in Barbados, um, you know, and other regulations to implement CSRTs and so forth. I think we are slowly getting there within the Caribbean, but I think a lot still needs to be done to bring that level of awareness. And I think one of the signs of any active cybersecurity framework, plan, regulations, whatever you want to call it, is just look at the public awareness. If there's some level of public awareness, you definitely know that there's some program. But some persons will say it otherwise. But in the meantime, cyber affects all of us, not only businesses, not only governments, but we as general users of these services, etc.
Okay. So we just spoke about governments. What role, if any, should electronic communications regulators in the region play in safeguarding service providers and consumer against cyber threats?
I think they need to advocate for better security, and I think have all the necessary stakeholders on board to identify what this base should look like, what this base we call just general security, and it can't be yesteryear because every couple of months it evolves. Actually, every month it evolves. So therefore, I think those regulators now need to almost be like a stakeholder for the Caribbean and say, hey, we have a general problem. How can we develop it and then work with all of the providers and so forth? Because we saw what happens to TSTT. We saw what happens in Australia and many other places, even Verizon, I think up to AT&T or Verizon, maybe up to last week. So therefore, everyone is at risk. And one would say if these companies are selling cyber, they have to be good. No, that's not the case. So I think the regulators and so forth and policymakers need to understand that they now have a key niche in their area to help develop cybersecurity where this can be, this base map can now overshadow. Yes, it has to be customized, but it can be overshadowed over the governments of the Caribbean. And I know that CARICOM Impact, the CTU, and I think the OECS with the what is it with the cybersecurity and cybercrime action plan. I think that's a good base to start from. I know that they have Curriculum Impacts have been doing tremendous amount of work from last year and more work still going on this year. But I think something like that there can be initiated and can be communicated not only from the heads of government, but throughout the whole sector will be fantastic in bringing that base level of cybersecurity or information security that is needed through the Caribbean at a very high level.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Millington.
And over standardization.
Yes, standardization
Right.
would be key. How do you approach building a robust cybersecurity strategy for a company operating in the Caribbean?
Well, one is to really understand the real budgets of the company. We love to work at the head itself. No program can be supported or can be successful without executive or boardroom or governmental support. And we start at that level. We start being able to understand where the gaps within the security, and the security not in terms of maybe firewalls or so forth, but from the governance level, right down into the technology level. And understanding that risk and helping them to visualize that risk, we then try to work in implementing the necessary areas, all at standards, ISO. We use a varying range of standards, ISO, the NEST standard, wherever it's COVID, whatever the situation is, we have those mappings and we make those mappings available to the lower, maybe into operations and so forth, helping them understand what that security goal looks like. That strategy passed on, let us implement those goals, and this is what it looks like. And we work from the top to the bottom. We try to make sure that everything is in an ecosystem and not to be able to just build in some small portions. Because if you do everything, we call modular. If you do this, modular security is not going to work because we all know that if you look at some phones, everything seems to be modular and they don't seem to kind of operate together and so forth. And we don't want that. Everything must flow within a company because at the end of the day, the company is there to make money. Government is here to not only to make money, but to support us because you have to pay its bills. You have to provide new services, public services, and so forth. So if those systems start to break down, then you really no need for no cybersecurity. So cybersecurity is supposed to really that should treat it in enabling of business, regardless if it's within government, health sector, etc.
Okay. Are there any specific challenges or vulnerabilities unique to the Caribbean region that make it particularly susceptible to cyber threats? I know earlier we were speaking about our natural resources and so on, but do you want to go into that a bit?
Yeah, I think our again that twist is us as a people. If we don't understand, I mean, think of it, we have beautiful culture, music, you know, uh, our cuisine, all those types of things. We have fantastic chefs that go all around the world and win. We have a culture in those particular areas. But when it comes to culture security, or that security culture, much doesn't exist. So you might, for instance, have a company put in a lot in cybersecurity awareness training. But if you are not creating, I don't want to use a lot of big words there, but defense and defense, zero trust, and all those type of things. If those things are low in maturity, as we call it within the field, what little it is to say to a child, you teach it not to use matches, but you leave the knives out, you leave the pool open, you leave the window open with any bars that can crawl through and fall 6 feet, 10 feet. So this is similar within the Caribbean itself. We need to build a security culture. We need to have persons understand that those who are in control, of companies, policies, and so forth, if we don't understand the risk, then we're not going to support it. And if our team come to us and say, let's say manager director of CariSec Global, and they're not listening to the persons on the ground and say, sir, we have a problem for security, and say, well, that's not important right now. I have other priorities. And they can see that risk growing. Eventually, I can be shut down. Eventually, I can be breached. You know, we look at something like confidentiality, integrity, and availability of data. I could be a health sector and or within the legal sector, and my integrity of information has been compromised. How does it affect a case? How certain information get out there, how does it affect, let's say, in a case or a treatment. So we as a people need to understand that security is very important. Until we understand that we are the greatest vulnerability to our structures.
Okay. So we spoke a lot about businesses and governments and so on, but how can individuals, the man and woman on the street, better protect themselves from cyber threats such as theft or phishing scams?
Right. I think it's as I also said, the person who called me who have lost a level of identity, I'll say, you know what, we need to encourage our um persons we get services from, even our governments, to continue to carry out that public awareness or awareness to customers. It's also our due diligence to go on the internet. I mean, we can do general searches. How can we protect our credit cards? How, our identity online, what we post, and so forth. Persons need to understand that this is not 20 or 30 years ago, where we can do things and no one would not want to use that information against us. But now each and one of us have so many social media interactions and use of platforms. The adversary is now able to use, or the cyber criminals are now able to use AI, or some form of AI bots, etc., to be able to glean the internet, to have that customized information either on you that they can send back to you or send to your family members or send to someone else. So we need to continue our own learning experience, use the internet wisely, not only for playing games and watching videos, but to see how we can better improve our awareness and encourage the companies that we do business with. We need to know more about cyber. And when they understand that we as the customers need to know more about how we can protect ourselves and so forth. And not only that, sometimes we can even help the client. We can even help the business to understand they might have a problem before someone exploits it. That's the main thing. Able to discover vulnerabilities before someone exploits it. Yeah.
Okay, so I was just thinking about the elderly, who some of them might be left behind with this whole digital economy and all this cyber talk. Is there any advice you would have for, persons with elderly folks in their lives who might not be as attuned to what's happening with the whole issue of cybersecurity, and what can we do to protect the elderly in the population?
The elderly, if they can do their reading and so forth, it helps. But, if you look at my background, I come out of government, work for a short period of time. And I would say one of the greatest thing that I can say, thank the Barbados government for, or any other government, is able to understand the need for governance. We have a responsibility to say to those who get service from either within government or not, you need to do more public awareness. There are just some groups that will not be able to. We must be realistic. We must be honest with ourselves. There are going to be some persons that are not going to understand this here. And we need to hold them hands. We need to hold, and also with younger persons too. It might be some person with a challenge. So we need to have this holding hands of helping persons to understand this type of I think in Barbados we have digital ambassadors and so forth. So we need to find alternative way. We can't leave people behind because you know what's going to happen. It's not only going to cause risk to those persons, but it means it could be possible risk to you. So we have to again think the security culture. If our clients or customers or users are aware, it means that we are aware. So you have that feedback loop.
Thanks for that, Mr. Millington. What emerging trends or technologies do you foresee shaping the future of cybersecurity, especially in the Caribbean?
I would say not only AI is the major one, but I would say the digital evolution, the use of automation. And obviously AI and automation is going to most probably intertwine very soon. It has already. But the fact is we have to understand that automation, AI and automation are going to be two most important things that we need to prepare people for. One is not only because of jobs, you also have to service these things and so forth, but you have to be realistic of loss of jobs. How do we move persons to the next particular level? How is AI is going to affect jobs and so forth? We have to be realistic. AI might help us right now, but what about 3 and 4 or 5 years down the road? Would I still need the secretary at the front? There have been a talk about an AI CEO, so those are the two main areas, artificial intelligence, AI, and automation within the industry, regardless of if it's with chickens, the agriculture industry, manufacturing, and so forth. We have to start preparing for those kind of technology and how it affects the human element itself.
Okay. Before I ask you my last question, you said a lot throughout our interview about the need for there to be public awareness and persons reading and so on. But I don't want to assume that everyone watching this would have understood some of the terms. So can you very briefly just explain, for example, about the phishing scams, how you could pick this up, or what exactly is ransomware, just very briefly for persons who really and truly are clueless about these things.
Right, no problem. Phishing is form of an email to get something from you to trick you, and it's always associated with some form of social engineering. To get into a company as businesses, governments, etc. As a sector strengthen its security, all the evidence shows that the human element, us as people, is the greatest risk to the organization. So how do we get past all these filters? So you have this social engineering features within the email itself to get you to click on something, to click on a URL, get you to download a piece of malware. A malware is a piece of software that once it installed on the computer, it can start to do nefarious things it should not do. In other words, it can also take over the computer. It can just sit there with something called info stealers, where it just glean your information. It can pick up your, keyloggers. It can pick up what you're typing, what you're seeing, and etc. So malware actually is what we call ransomware. Once malware is activated to encrypt your files or at least exfiltrate your files, how ransomware comes into play is, you have to pay a ransom back for something that is yours. So in this particular case, you have a piece of email might come in, could be a phishing email talking about some trade or some price list or whatever it is. You click on it to open it. Or a phishing email can take your credentials. You know, you say you need support, you're going to change a password, you need to change it or something like that. You're going to put in something. At the end of the day, it is for the adversary to use a particular medium or vector to get you to help them to compromise the system where they can now take control of to either exfiltrate your data, and in some cases, they can also encrypt it. So encryption is not always the main thing that a company should look for. You might have a piece of malware sitting on your machine or adversary in your system, just taking data and exfiltrating it. And then after a couple of months or weeks, whatever you want to call it, say to you, no, we have all this data, these gigs of data. If you don't want it to be posted on the internet or to be sold, pay us a ransom.
Wow. Interesting. And you mentioned companies, but be mindful of folks that you can get these emails in your personal email. It doesn't have to be work related. I recall seeing quite a few in my Hotmail asking for information, and some of them seem so legitimate. So you need to be mindful. Don't just click on any links, read before and check the sender. That's a key giveaway as well, because whilst what they're saying might seem, true or important or factual, just look at the email address as well. That's a good giveaway.
And if I may add something, always, verify. Before you trust something, verify. If you get something come to you, let's say it's from me, you're not quite sure, see if you can contact me by phone call. In the banking industry, check the URL properly. It might say, like, for instance, suppose it was Jackcom, it might have Jackcom maybe .bb is the official site, but it might say it's .ca or whatever else it is. Or it might have some precursor. But we also want to alert persons that there are valuable sites that are compromised for a short period of time that these cyber criminals use. So you might, let's say, for instance, CNN could be compromised for just that small, let's say, 5-minute window, right? The information is put there. You click on all the CNNs, it's correct. You go there, but after, let's say, a couple of 5-10 minutes, it's no longer there. So these adversaries can spin up domains, maybe, let's say, 100 domains within a minute. Shut them down after 5 minutes. So everything is automated, like what I talk about, and they're now using AI now to really try to trick you. So you have to be aware of what is going on. Don't take everything for granted. Always verify. Keep a very up-to-date antivirus or EDR solution on your system. And remember, you can have your device compromised, and you're gonna take this device into the office. You can hook it up, let's say you could compromise your phone, you hook it up through the USB, and it could come through the USB cable, yes. Or it could be, you attack the wireless, use the wireless to get back into the organization. So we have to think about awareness training in a very holistic approach. And it doesn't take much. Once we build a security culture, which the Caribbean is not terribly, we are growing, it becomes so normal for persons that it becomes second nature. We won't see something difficult. We won't see it so surprising. When we walk outside, we never think and say, oh, we will never be robbed. We know at some point we will be robbed, and we always be vigilant. So this is the same case when it comes into the digital world. Always be vigilant. Don't take anything for granted, and understand that this, what we call a criminal syndicate, is money driven. It is good money. Actually, up to last year, if cybercrime based on their finances, it could be the third most largest economy in the world.
What?
Third most largest. So it is money to be made. And as we know, when it comes to the criminal element, no one leave a cent unturned.
Wow. Yeah, this is a lot, and it's somewhat scary, but that's why you have companies like yours and individuals within respective companies working in information systems to ensure that we can protect ourselves. And as you rightfully said, it's for us to be cautious, to be aware, and to look out, because they're out there trying to get in. So to wrap up, your company, CariSec Global Inc., has a few virtual workshops coming up. Take a few minutes to tell us about them and the topics to be covered, the dates, and really who should attend.
Right. So we have three webinars coming up. One is going to be actually tomorrow around this time, a little bit after before this time, where we talk about digital premise liability. And what we are looking at is to raise awareness, not only within the legal sector, because you have the financial other persons that are entrusted with data, but we want to look at the legal sector because this sector is now seriously under threat and it can affect the rule of law. Could you imagine up to I think yesterday or 2 days ago, entity was of law firm was put in court, and now there's a group of families saying that if you have been compromised, if you don't, in America, if you don't have a particular date to respond, you're gonna lose. But this law firm is supposed to protect the sex offender, persons who have been sexually been affected, and their information was leaked on the internet. So we want to highlight to the legal sector your responsibility in having good cyber hygiene. Now, after that, there we have another webinar in regards to ISO 27001, 27005, which is when it comes to risk management, cybersecurity, lead managers, and incident management. And we want to draw awareness. We have an expert that creates this documentation and so forth, who's also a deputy CISO. She wants to come on and talk about how we can actually enhance our information security within the region. So we'll be looking at the ISO 27001. Like I said, our business makes sure that whatever we do is based on standards, international standards, etc. And then last but not least, very important is business continuity. Not business continuity from the cyber perspective, but business continuity of the overall organization itself, so that it can help you to understand how you can actually develop the necessary processes in case of any disaster, regardless of if it's a flood, etc., or even a cybersecurity attack, keeping business going. So those are going to be the three webinars. The last two is going to be on the 6th and the 7th around, I think it's 2:30 our time in the afternoon. So therefore, we gave everyone the chance to just come on and listen. Our aim is not only to provide cybersecurity services, but to create the new culture. If you look at our vision and our mission, our aim is to create the new culture within the Caribbean that is so much needed in fighting this threat. Because if you look at it, recently Barbados have been off of the Financial Action Task Force, off the gray list. It costs a lot of money to do that. Every single month we spend a lot of money. Every country spend a lot of money. The same thing when it comes to cyber. If we can raise that level of awareness, it means then that our money and our efforts can be prioritized and put in other places than some things to respond to these incidences that can take our businesses offline, costing us a lot of money in recovery, hundreds of thousands of dollars, yes. For a small company, tens of thousands of dollars. And even then, when you're finished, it's still not at the point you really want to be. So our aim is to really create that culture, that business continuity culture, and that awareness when it comes to resilience in business, resilience in cyber, etc. For all sectors, regardless of if you're in health or government.
Okay, so these workshops are free, but could you tell persons where they could go to sign up, your website information?
Yes. What I can do, I would have shared that there with you, but we have on our main website, if you click on that, you're gonna have that main webinar, and we're gonna update from tomorrow the other two webinars itself. So we don't have a page of it was going to send it to select few persons. They have been posted. Actually, they're on our Facebook and linking CariSec Global profile. So if you go to LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, you will be able to join those webinars.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being our guest on episode 22 of ECTEL Bytes, Mr. Millington. It was an eye-opener for me, and if persons would have noticed, this show has been our longest, and that was for a reason. It was a lot of information, but we really thought it was important to get it out there. And I'm really hoping in the future we can have you back on to discuss this further because there's still a lot to dissect.
That is correct. And we try to keep it simple, for the average person. So again, thank you very much. And thank you for the opportunity to come on and share this within the region.
Okay, thank you again. So in case you joined us late, our special guest was Mr. Edward Millington, the founder and managing director of CariSec Global Inc. And if you have any questions, be sure to leave them in the comments and we'll be sure to respond to them. And I will also share the link for these free workshops coming up being hosted by CariSec Global Inc. in the comments as well. So apart from being on our Facebook page, the recording of ECTEL Bytes will also be on our YouTube channel, which is at ECTEL. It will also be on Instagram and X, formerly Twitter, which is at ECTEL Authority. And of course, it's going to be on our website, www.ectel.int. So be sure to share it with your contacts who are not on Facebook because this information is pertinent to everyone. So thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you again virtually on Wednesday, March 27th for another episode of ECTEL Bytes from 2 p.m. Eastern Caribbean time. I'm your host, Coretta Crooks-Charles, ECTEL's Communications and Media Relations Manager. Thank you so much for viewing, and until next time, take care.